Hi, and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Carrie Siggins. And this is an advice from a CEO episode. And I want to talk about being an ambidextrous leader and running an ambidextrous organization. What does ambidexterity mean in the business world? Well, it's the ability to apply multiple approaches to strategy, to leadership, to scaling and growing your business, either concurrently or successively. And this is really tough because a lot of times we as leaders, we want to do it the way that we have always done it in the past because that's how we've been successful. It's hard to be able to hold two opposing ideas in your mind at the same time, to be able to say, I'm going to grow my current business, but also explore new businesses. And those might look very different. I might have grown a team this way, but now I'm in a new role and now we need to think about it in a different way. And that's what being an ambidextrous leader is all about. And this is really important because there is no doubt that things are going to keep changing fast. We are going to be facing many other crises in our careers as leaders, and we're going to have to be able to pivot, to change. If there's anything that the pandemic taught us, is that our whole world can get turned upside down, and we need to be able to modify how we do things, look at things differently so that we can advantage of new opportunities or even just survive. And so my motto for 2022 is going to be two things. One, really go for it, just going to go for it. And two, be an ambidextrous leader. I want to be able to separate what's going on in my world, to be able to switch gears when I need to be able to organize myself and organize the ecosystem of my companies in ways that can handle how dynamic things are going to be in the future. So I'd like to encourage you to think about this yourself, right? How are you going to be an ambidextrous leader? How are you going to handle all of the challenges that are going to come your way? How are you going to handle the diversity of the situations that you're going to face? And this might mean that you have to take different approaches to your strategy, take different approaches to building your team, and really being able to say, okay, here's how I've always done things. And I'm not going to throw all of that away, but I'm going to leave behind what isn't working and I'm going to build a new way on top of that foundation. That's what being ambidextrous is all about. So, hopefully, this gives you some ideas. How do you handle the challenges of being a leader in these crazy times and not just get overwhelmed with all of the change that you're forced to face because of these times? Really, it's about embracing change, right? If there's one thing that humans are meant to do, it is change and evolve, and we can see that throughout our entire history. And unfortunately, there's a lot of us who are adverse to that because we're afraid of the outcome. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of losing something that we have. So then we dig in and really try to keep status quo because that feels safe. But it isn't safe. The fact is that things are going to change whether you're willing to change with it or not. And you're going to change even though you say that you're unwilling because we all do. We all modify ourselves. We all have to change with the times. And we can either do that going down, kicking and screaming, or we can do it with grace and with flow and with ambidexterity, with that ability to be able to say, what is my environment bringing to me? What situation am I in right now? And how do I flex myself to be able to maximize my impact, maximize the outcome, and approach a task, a leadership event, a strategy from these two different approaches or multiple approaches? So, anyway, that's my thoughts today on really what leadership is going to require. I just wrote an article for entrepreneur.com on 5 leadership trends, and woven throughout all of this is really the need for more ambidextrous leaders, more ambidextrous organizations, organizations that can change as rapidly as our environment is changing, who can really set the pace for what this new way of doing business is going to look like that we don't quite all have figured out yet, but we know it's going to be different. All right. So hopefully that inspires you for the end of the year. This is my last advice from the CEO for the year. We'll kick back off in early January. I do have one more awesome interview next week to end the year. As you're thinking about your goals and what you want for 2022, what a home run would look like for 2022, start to weave in this idea of ambidexterity into it, because I think it's going to be a pretty powerful tool and a powerful mindset to have going forward. Okay, my question of the week comes from one of my podcast guests. I was talking to him after my podcast, and he asked me, "What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?" And boy, I've received some good advice. I have so many fantastic mentors, and I try to surround myself with people who are far smarter than me, who have different talents and skills than me, so that I can learn from them. But there's one piece of advice that I received that really stands out, and it came from a very near and dear mentor. And he said, "Carrie, hard work will only get you so far. To build an exceptional team and to build an exceptional company, what matters the most is the quality of your relationships." I'll let that sink in. That is pretty profound, because when we're thinking about success, we often think about ourselves, right? Am I putting in the effort? Do I have a vision? Do I have a plan? Am I giving the proper guidance to my team? Do they understand the expectations, right? All of these different things that don't necessarily put the relationship first. But this is so true, because in life, like, that's what we all want to do. We all want to feel like we're part of something that's bigger than ourselves. We want to find that purpose in what we do. And we want to have meaningful connections and meaningful relationships in our lives. I think we can all look at those really valuable relationships in our life and say, wow, I get a lot out of that, and I could use more of that. But it takes work. It takes a lot of work to build relationships, especially with your colleagues, because we all come in every day with all of our baggage from home, right? Life is messy. There's always something that's going on. We come in with our own fears and worries about how we're going to be judged and comparing ourselves to others. And if we feel that our teammates aren't putting the relationship first, it's hard for us to do the same. And so there's this give and take that has to come, especially in the workplace when it comes to building relationships. But the most effective teams are teams that are cohesive. And that comes from trust. It comes from getting to know each other. It comes from clear communication. It comes from effort and everybody knowing that each person on the team is going to pull his or her weight. And all of those combined is really what the relationship looks like, what that quality of the relationship actually is. So, that is the best piece of advice that I have ever received. I actually give a keynote speech on this topic in particular. I have learned the hard way about h- how being self centered can ruin your relationships and can almost ruin your life, because I think that is a big part of what my problem was back in my 20s when I went down such a destructive path. Is I cared more about myself than I did about the quality of my relationships, and I didn't recognize it then, but I recognize it now. And luckily I've been able to turn that around and see the power of caring more about other people than myself. And I think that is something that we could all probably do better at. Not all of us. Some people give more than they put into themselves, but which can be almost as destructive. But there's that right kind of balance, right? Of putting the work into the relationship and making sure that you're setting those boundaries and taking care of yourself, so that there's a healthy, productive relationship, not where you're giving too little or you're giving too much. That balance is really important. So, anyway, build relationships. That's a great mantra to have. You will not go wrong by putting effort into building relationships with important people in your life, especially people on your team. It is not going to happen unless you put in the work. All right, that is my advice from a CEO. as part of Reflect Forward, last one of the year. I look forward to hosting you next week for my final interview of the year with a really fun and inspiring guy who I think will, you know, give you rocket fuel. Tune in next week to find out more. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe, like, rate, share. I always appreciate it. I hope that you have a wonderful holiday season. Oh, and I just learned from my French colleagues that you never say Happy New Year before the New Year is here. So in France, they only say Happy New Year once the New Year has arrived after midnight. They say Happy end of year celebrations before the New Year. So happy year end celebrations to you and your loved ones. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.